Howdy everyone. I just felt like talking a bit about the worst animated movies tonight, and yeah, it's interesting with these ones because they all fall into their own separate categories. Like they might be cartoon, CG, but they all just are their own special awful in some way, and that was part of what made this list quite fun to do. Yeah, and like even something like Don Bluth's, Troll in Central Park isn't technically bad on an animation level, but anyway, we'll get to that later. I showed a bit of Felix the Cat there, but it didn't quite make it into the category for me of the worst, but it was all over the place. And actually, I will be talking about one of these in the worst Sony movies that I did show there, Scared Silly. How can I forget the name of that? Open Season Scared Silly. Like a DVD ripoff of Open Season with none of the original voice actors. Anyway, so Delgo, in some way, I put this at the start of the list because in some ways I don't think it's that bad, in that you could tell there was a creative team behind this, and I almost felt bad for adding it even though it was quite ugly to look at and very, very meticulous and slow and boring, and swarm of bees is all I think when I see that. It actually reminds me of a game I used to play when I was a kid called Warwind, or some of you might be more familiar with Warcraft, and it is quite similar to that, and I think I make that reference. It's similar to a World of Warcraft game. But, yeah, and the voices were kind of annoying as well, and it just certainly didn't click with me, this one. Even kind of the ugly greens you can see there. Yeah, I did recognize a couple of the voice actors. I think Robert Paulson was in there too, but he's in like everything, but good for him. He always brings an interesting voice to it. But if you look at some of those backgrounds, it looks okay. There's a odd weather going on there. There's kind of beautiful clouds in the background. There's big complex war, and it's such a tragedy when a company can't quite get that idea off the ground and properly executed, because you can see a beautiful idea there. Just never was executed. This, however, wasn't a beautiful idea. I think we all know this one from, I think Brinquedo did this one? Yeah, I'm pretty sure they did. Video Brinquedo. The only thing I liked about this one was the fact that Lena Inverse from a couple of from an anime I like called Slayers, the English voice actor of her was like one of the starring roles, and yeah, just obviously the CG was horrible, and there wasn't really any structure to this one. It was hard to know what was going on at any time, and I've seen more unbearable things. I mean, this one sort of falls into the category of so bad it's good, but like even here, he will just go on for ages about the most dull thing of how nice the food is. And I'm like, okay, yes, can we move on, please, to something a little more interesting? I mean, some conflict would be nice. And we all know it was trying to copy off Ratatouille, obviously. But, yeah, just you could actually see this kind of CG animation from a beginning CG animator, like in just like his first year of uni, using something like 3ds Max. I've made kind of similar models myself, and I guess Brinquedo just has to cut corners at every possible place in order to make a profit. So there you go. Tappy Toes. Now this one actually, I felt a little bad for putting this one on the list, because if you look at the animation, it's not that bad. Like it's its own stylized thing. It's cartoons. There's a little lazy flash animation, but and if you look at ones like this, I think they also did a Kung Fu Panda ripoff. But the odd thing is, if they weren't a ripoff, they would actually be kind of stand on their own as a separate mediocre cartoon. But just the fact that they tried to rip off Happy Feet gave them a bad reputation, and a lot of people aren't really willing to give it a try. And this is probably the only one on the list I would change, because I wouldn't personally call it one of the worst animated movies of the top 10. It's certainly not good. It's bad, but it's certainly not the absolute worst. Like, the voices are annoying, and Yeah, it doesn't really go anywhere very interesting, but it's kind of a slightly different take on Happy Feet, which was interesting to see. And for those who don't know, you obviously know it's from Star versus the Forces of Evil. When Star's old boyfriend gets mad at Marco and Tentacolino. I do think the Tentacolino is worse than the original Titanic movie. I mean, when I first saw this, I was like, it was bad, but I didn't know why people were so insulted by it. And then I was like, well, if you think about it, the people who saw this, they've basically rewritten the story. And people who have, lost people in the tragedy that was the Titanic would be understandably insulted by essentially them rewriting history and making it so toony and goofy and stupid and just all over the place. And even then, when you take that away, it's so befuddled, muddled, and all over, like, everywhere. Like, you have no idea what's going on. Like, some toys come out. There's like a toy army. They get taken to Atlantis, and, then a shark tries, originally the shark tries to get rid of them, and when they're looking for the Titanic, and through Atlantis they find the Titanic, and they get some sort of treatment to allow them to breathe underwater, and then there's this bunch of rats from the original Titanic. Ugh, it's nuts. Anyway, yes, a very bad animated movie. And yes, Eight Crazy Nights, which it's Adam Sandler does have this element of kind of mean-spiritedness and awkwardness to a lot of his movies, and I've never really liked it. And I used to watch a couple of his movies when I was a kid, growing up, early teen years. And the thing is, I didn't really notice the kind of the nasty undertones there, but this is just concentrated nasty, this one of Adam Sandler. It's like the most uncharming Adam Sandler possible. I'm going to talk about this one a little bit in worst Sony animated movies. This might already be out by the time this comes out, but yeah, and his voices were all kind of weird and high-pitched, and apparently he did the lady as well, and she is not, probably of the three, the least annoying character, but essentially we're just watching Sandler be really, really cruel to this nice, friendly older man, and pick on him, and it's real insult to the Hanukkah season, because anyone who has a nice spirit in this is just trodden all over, like it's trying to incite the Hanukkah spirit. And I don't know if they just kind of let Sandler get away with it, and some person actually finds him, worth dating at the end, and he is such a jerk. And like, I guess good for him, everyone should be loved, but goodness, he has not earned it. He is so nasty, and he's kind of nice at the end. He says, well, I guess we were all a bit mean to... Who is he to say that you've all been mean to Whitey? Whitey's the older guy. I mean, he has been cruel and nasty to him the whole time and done horrible things and ruined his house, and it's absolute garbage. Yeah, but very unpleasant all the way through and really hard to sit through. But Elf Bowling, I always remember this one because I sometimes get my dad to have Happy to watch through my movies before I put them up, and this is the one he fell asleep at, and I was like, wow, this animation, either I am really boring and I have failed at my job, or this animation is so bad and ugly and boring that my father is just trailed out and just doesn't, just cannot even keep his eyes awake for his son's video. So it kind of has a nasty memory to me, because I was like, oh God, have I really failed this badly? But, this video ended up getting up over 1 million views, so I guess I did something right, I don't know. but particularly for this one, the animation just looked awful, and I think it's so stupid, the idea that he bowls over elves. It's just like, why would you do that? And why would he be a pirate? That's so stupid. Put all them toys in that chest. Sorry. And he has an evil brother, and it's just an absolute mess of a movie. And I didn't know where to begin. And his evil brother's got like they're on an island there. I can't even remember what happened. I just phased out for that one. It's just absolutely terrible. Dougal apparently was slightly better originally in its original English version, I think it was, but God, I really hated the animation for this one. It's kind of very smooth, and there's something very sickly sweet about it. I don't know if they use too many smoothing filters through Photoshop or what it is, but God, that's ugly. It's just like, it's so 3-year-old animation. It just really, sickly, saccharine animation. Like, I could have put this on the list purely for the animation because I dislike it personally that much, but even then, it was, again, really unstructured, and the US version retranslated everything, cut a lot of the original stuff out, and kind of made it a Lord of the Rings kind of thing, where they're kind of following the Lord of the Rings plot and looking for these, I think they were rocks or something, these 3 gems to rule them all or something, and the voice actors phone it in. It's just it's white noise performance, what I call white noise performance, where they say their lines with kind of the intonation, but they are so out of the role you can literally kind of see them in your head in the recording booth. I have that with like the Smurfs movies and a lot of the Sony movies as well, where I can see the actors almost in my head in the recording booth and imagine just them going, okay, let's get through this and just do this. All right, blah, 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 blah. And like, sometimes you can feel a voice actor really connect with a role. And certainly couldn't in some of these. In A Car's Life, this is fun to rip on, this one, because it is so stupid, so bad. It's so, like, the animation makes no sense, and the plot's just dumb. And he gets pulled over for a ticket here. And this lady's voice was so bad. You could bring a squealing 3-year-old into the recording booth who could give a less annoying, with red cordial and just all over the place. If she was super high, she would still give a slightly less annoying voice than this pink car. And yeah, so for this one, he's kind of, the red car is kind of being led astray by this green car who's kind of very nihilistic, I guess, and it's just like, oh, let's go do the wrong thing. And I guess the pink car's kind of trying to do the right thing. I don't know. I was so blown away, and all I can remember is that she does when she dies. So it was just, and like, it's things like, it's night. The characters will say, "Oh, it's night. We should go home," and it's not actually night in the sky. And the insane part is they made, I think, 5 more of these, but they are so uncommon, like the last 3, that I was like, oh, these would be perfect for worse sequels. But I couldn't actually track them down. I couldn't even find a DVD copy. But I know they exist. Like I think it was the Wiki article or something. Some unknown weird page says they exist. I was like, oh, these would be so cool. But they did update the animation. It wasn't quite as awful as this, and that kind of takes some of the fun out of it when you slightly update the animation. Troll in Central Park, I do not regret putting this here because I guess it doesn't really feel like it fits because the animation is okay. But, oh god, I look at it, it is so saccharine, it is so creepy, and just the way it's put together, and it's from Don Bluth, who I think did better than Disney at times, who could emotionally deliver to children better than Disney could, and with this kind of dark edge to it that left it just as this really edgy, interesting, powerful memory, like something like Land Before Time here. And oh, the speech this guy delivers, like, and when Littlefoot's mother dies there, and when he finds the Hidden Valley, and it's just so golden and beautiful. Oh, so much more interesting and so much better than like a lot of his later work. Fievel was amazing too. I actually liked Fievel Goes West, done by Steven Spielberg. I thought that was really amazing. I mean, God, look at that. That's just gorgeous. I grew up with Land Before Time, and it remains one of the best. If I do ever do the best animated movies, it will probably be on there. I would talk more about this in Troll in Central Park, but good God, guys, this is so saccharine. I remember seeing it when I think I said it in here, but I saw the ad when I was 6, and I was like, oh God, this looks so horrible. Like, I just wanted Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to come in and destroy them all. And I'm kind of talking here about how I do like a little bit of cloying and sweet, but there is a very fine line between sweet and just insincere. He's flicking his ears there. Just everything about this guy. Maybe if we didn't have an age where you had to have a blue card for everything, it wouldn't be such a creepy kind of weird thing. But I do not like that troll at all. He is so saccharine. Oh God. And yeah, everyone in the world has talked about Little Panda Fighter, so every top 10 list has talked about it. So I just said, yeah, leave it off the list. And Drawn Together the movie, this is well, you guys know my thoughts on this one. I've talked about it a couple of times. It's the worst sequel I know of. Really, but again, it was a really earnest, unbelievable stunt that had happened, because it was essentially someone kamikazing their career, essentially saying, I'm never going to work in animation again, so I might as well go out with a bang and say screw you to everyone. Norm of the North, I talked about this one a bit in Worst Cartoons of 2016, but Rob Schneider just left no real impact whatsoever on this, despite, as I said, being a polar bear. And that's kind of the cheap sort of jokes you'd expect from something like Sony. So it's, certainly didn't leave an impact for me. Nut Job, again, really forgettable. A lot of these ones I did leave off the list because they were just really forgettable and there wasn't much to talk about. Excuse me. I think Hoodwinked I did talk about in the worst animated remakes. I can't quite recall. I do. It might have been the sequel. And Chicken Little, when I look at this one afterwards, I'm like, God, what was I complaining about? Compared to these, it is so much less ugly, and I can kind of put the mean-spirited thing aside because it's kind of a happy ending, if bittersweet. And of course, Food Fight, which, yes. Originally I was going to do a review, then I was just like, let's just break it down. I had so much today, I just said, let's break it down and talk about each part that is just so terrible about this. You can literally, make a really bad animated movie just by following this tutorial. And like the cameras were all over the place. But I will say, it was fun to hate this one. This one is so kind of in the Room category, and it's so bad it's good. You can watch it and be like, whoa, boy. And I couldn't believe a word of any of their body language. I couldn't believe any of the camera angles. I didn't like the colors. I didn't like the kind of ugly browns of the characters. I didn't like the fact they were selling out. It was just so much to hate. And like those leering big eyes, and it's so busy as well. Like so much is happening there, but none of it connects with you because it's just, there's no emotion behind it. There's no character behind it either. It's just, and whenever I watch it, I've watched it like 4 times, but I still kind of black out every time I watch it because I can never remember what the hell goes on. I think the dingo secret agent guy kind of gets in a relationship with the weird human lady, and I think they have the Brand X comes in when Christopher Lloyd tries to introduce it to the shop, and again, it's a little bit like Tentacolino in that just it is all over the place, and it's really hard to know where to even begin. It's so unstructured. There probably is technically worse animation out there, but this one just made so many mistakes and was just an impossible mess. It really was. I'm gonna do a little there. I think that one got It was quite well remembered, actually, that one there. I actually noticed you can just see my gut for a second there. I probably should have edited that out. Yeah, but it really does make Chicken Little look considerably better when you see this one. All of them do. That's the thing. Like, Disney does not... Nothing Disney could come even close to fitting into this category, even their worst of the worst. But I did like Christopher Lloyd, as I mentioned before, him playing Survival of the Fittest, or whatever he says there. And yeah, I think that's worth taking away, is that we have seen a lot of really good animated movies, despite the fact that I'm currently making the worst Sony animated movies, but when you've got Disney and Pixar bringing out regular stuff, I wish they weren't spending so much time on live action remakes, which are pretty inferior to the animation as far as I'm concerned. But there's a lot to look forward to in terms of animation, because as I often say, the people who grew up with the good stuff remember the good stuff, and they're animating now, and we've got a couple of good companies that will keep us getting some good animation. Well, thanks very much for watching, guys. I'll talk to you later.